Okay, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deeley. My co-host, Professor Lucas Hubo, is out there teaching at the moment, so I'm home minding the fort. Although there are some tournaments that are in our area, which is Arizona, and I can safely report that submission coffee remains unclassified as a performance enhancing drug. So you can subscribe to it at the jujitsumindset.com. If you please, we're fortunate as we are every week to talk to interesting people who are, making an impact in our world in a variety of different ways. And usually we're talking to somebody who's dedicated their life to jujitsu and they're professor of jujitsu, and that's who we spend our time speaking mostly with. But the jujitsu lifestyle includes a variety of different ideas. And we talk about how we eat and how we sleep, and having an underlying healthy body allows us to progress in our jiu-jitsu journey in a way that if we don't take care of ourselves, it's at cross purposes to that. So I'm very lucky today. We're going to talk about both ways in which to keep yourself healthy and then times when perhaps you get dinged up with an injury, some tools that might help you recover. And when I look at her podcast, she goes by the Rebel Scientist, I think. So today we're lucky enough to have Dr. Sarah Turner with us. So Dr. Turner, thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
And you and I met via a mutual friend named John Graham, and he was on the podcast once, and we talked a bit about a therapy and a tool that he has to bring red light therapy to athletes. And he was good enough actually to send me one. And I got a little bit of experience now, experiencing red light therapy as a tool to help me with my body's health. So that's how we come together. But I feel like you do a lot of things that are interesting and you affect people in a variety of different ways. And could you perhaps give us a little introduction to the work that you do out there in the world? Because I'd like people to understand it more than I can explain it.
Thank you, Sam. Yes. So, yes, I'm part of the red light therapy gang, if you like. So, yeah, along with John and some others, we travel around and we talk about red light therapy or photobiomodulation to give it its posh scientific name. But my focus is mainly on brain health and brain wellness, a gut-brain connection. And that's from the point of view of health, but also general wellness and also mental health. So I go around and, like you say, I'm doing a lot of talks and things on that. It was lovely to connect to you actually, because I have done a fair bit of martial arts training as well in the
Oh,
past.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, it's great to bring in that mindset too. I did Chinese martial art. I did Wing
Hmm.
Chun.
Hmm.
So yeah, but it's the same philosophy. So yeah, my thing is really general wellness, focusing mainly on brain, mental health, and the gut-brain connection.
And maybe we could talk a little bit about the gut brain connection as a place to start, because
Yeah.
when we describe being healthy, there's a lot of things that are, I think, obvious for jujitsu practitioners. The exercise part of being healthy is the most fun. Like we enjoy all that physicality. And then once you start to move outside of the physical part of it, then you get into things that require different types of discipline. And what we eat isn't always as easy to control as what we do with our bodies. And then how we sleep and all the different things that go along with being healthy outside the mat. I feel like the gut brain connection is something that gets a lot of attention in superficial health and wellness publications and of that, but I don't know that it's terribly well understood. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what that is and then ways in which you might suggest people attend to it as well.
Yeah, like you say, at the moment, it's getting a lot of attention because I think people are beginning to discover how important it is, right?
Right.
How important is this connection between your gut and your brain, and in association, your gut and your mind, mental state? So the gut-brain connection simply refers to the way that the two organs are communicating. So obviously the gut is mainly where we process food, but also I'm going to convince you that it's also where we process light.
Mhm.
But certainly the gut is where we process food, and the gut is constantly sending information to the brain on the state of our environment. Certainly through the food we eat, through our light environment, through electromagnetic fields that we're involved in. So we have the vagus nerve, which is the main thing that people talk about with the gut-brain connection. And vagus actually is Latin for wandering, because it's a nerve that kind of goes all over the body and it innervates, particularly it innervates like around our gut and it goes up to our brain, at the side of our neck here.
Mhm.
And that controls a lot of things, actually. It controls how our bodies respond to the food we've eaten, but it also controls our sociality. As humans, the way that we interact with each other is modulated through this vagus nerve. In
Okay.
fact, humans have an additional vagal system, a polyvagal system, which was first really talked about by Stephen Porges, but this is also how we present ourselves. If we're unhappy or if we're sad or if we're sick, we have a flat effect, non-emotionality, because we need to recover. And all of that is controlled by the vagus nerve.
And I certainly have a very rudimentary understanding of the gut, but what I understand is that there's as many neural cells in our gut, maybe more neural cells in our gut than there is in our brain, is how I've understood it. And when you talk about how we present to each other, when many of the people that listen to this may be competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments, and that sense of fear or nervousness or what you're trying to master yourself by being in control often presents as like feelings in your stomach, that expression, butterflies in your belly or whatnot. Some part of our body is reacting to the tension of a competition, and it's presented in our guts often as like anxiety or fear about, okay, I'm going to step onto the mat with this person and I'm about to have my fight. So I find it interesting when you talk about the vagus nerve and its connection to the brain that's up on in our
Yeah.
head, that there's probably something there that happens when that's healthy. Perhaps you have a little more control over it. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
Sure. And like you say, there's a lot of neural tissue there. And actually, a lot of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut, like 80% of serotonin. And we also
mm,
make. So, yes, you're totally correct. In fact, some people call it the second brain. I think it's probably the first brain. Certainly, from an embryology
yeah,
point of view, the gut develops first and then the brain. And,
right.
and this is definitely where we have a lot of those sensations. Like you say, yeah, you do get like butterflies in the pit of your stomach because this is really neural tissue. This is really what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think from a point of view of kind of preparedness, yeah, of course, when you're stressed, you have all of those hormones, they're going up and down from your brain to your gut. Actually, there's a lot more innovation that goes from the gut to the brain than the other way around.
Interesting.
So the gut has a lot more information that it's telling the brain that the brain's using.
Okay.
And also stress. If we get stressed, we have cortisol, we have a lot of these hormones. We change our microbiome. The microbiome are sending messages. And from the point of view of this kind of interactive system, for sure, you can find ways to increase the tone of the vagus nerve. You can change your microbiome. And this will all affect your ability, your kind of resilience, and your ability to deal with stressful situations, which is what we're talking about with any kind of, even if it's like a semi-combat situation where you're even just training, your ability to control your stress levels, your ability to present that kind of very calm demeanor, all of that is ultimately controlled by that vagal tone that you have.
Yeah, so that I think we spend a lot of time talking about lessons learned on the mat applied to life off the mat. It's a big thesis of what we have here at our podcast. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about ways in which to either optimize or learn how to be sensitive to what is going on that doesn't serve you well in high stress situations. You have your thoughts that to calm yourself in some regard, but I think what you're saying is that system which you think with the brain in your head mostly, right? But that's in conversation with this other nervous system, enteric nervous system, second brain, first brain, whatever we might like to call it. What are some things that somebody, when they're thinking about living a jujitsu lifestyle, which is an analogy to a healthy lifestyle, they want to be the best they can be. What are some things that make those systems work right and better? And then what gets in the way of that?
I think one of the things that gets in the way, certainly of that sort of stuff, is stress and chronic stress.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things. And your body is doing very different things when you're living in chronic stress. It's very difficult for your body to be in the moment and attend to what's right in front of you. When you're in a stress state, your body's kind of on high alert. think of what's coming from behind you. It's that thing of thinking the tiger coming out of the bushes. If you have that switched on all the time, you're unable to even look at something straight in front of you from a point of view of your eye gaze. You're all over the place. Stress is one of those things that can really mess up any kind of training or anything where you need to focus and be in control, because
Okay.
your body is running a different program at that point.
And
So
in
this
this
is,
instance, Dr. Char, is it fair to say we're talking about chronic stress, right? Because we're inducing stress every time we step on the mats in a sense, right? We're voluntarily electing to be stressed for our training, the moments of training, the moments of competition. But that's different, I think, than what you're describing. You're talking where
yeah, I'm talking about if it's switched on all the time. We have it switched on all the
I
time.
agree. Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to be able to be in that state of high resilience, so that
Yeah.
flexibility of your nervous system, so that when you need to, you can be focused and ready to go. And then
Right.
when you need to, you can switch it off. It's a flexibility, like a flexibility within the nervous system that we want to encourage. And that's something that I've looked at when I'm looking at things like red light therapy or anything that strengthens that communication.
Right.
Because although we talk a lot about what we eat and our diet is hugely important, and I'm sure all your viewers are not on the processed foods and doing all the things, but actually our body, we are diurnal mammals that have evolved with sunlight.
Hmm.
So our bodies are very much in tune with our light environments. So even giving the body the correct messages or the incorrect ones, if we're living in a very indoor lifestyle, we're looking at blue screens, we're training under blue lights, you're giving yourself that constant stressor almost, that you never really bring that down until you either go and see every sunrise and sunset, which is the natural way to do it, or
Right.
you use a device like a red light therapy device that puts back that kind of missing information that our bodies need.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that because I think the people who are listening to this have a sense of diet as foundational. And even most of the people around me who are in the jiu-jitsu community, even if they're not applying the proper rules of what they should be eating, they're aware of it. At a minimum, they have a
Yeah.
general sense. They may not have a precise sense, but a general sense that, okay, I'm probably off the track here when I'm eating something that's not good for me. And natural light has gotten a lot of attention as well. So I think the notion of, okay, starting your day with some early morning sunlight and having a sense that the sun's going down by seeing the sunset, a lot of attention has been given to that. So could you talk a little bit about like how red light fits in within those ideas? Because that's something that is man-made. This is a medicine of sorts, I would call it. I don't know what the right term is, but, and so how might somebody think about it? And then maybe you could talk a little bit how they might start to seek that medicine, so to speak, if they wanted to take advantage of the benefits of this.
Yes. So like I said, we are creatures that have evolved under sunlight. So we do need to have all the different wavelengths of light that's contained in sunlight. We need all of those wavelengths. And we get wavelengths, which is like the red spectrum, so red and near infrared. We get those mostly at sunrise and sunset just because of the angle of the sun as it comes up.
Hmm.
Once we see those kinds of red and near infrared wavelengths, our body starts certain cascades of biochemical reactions, making hormones, setting us up for the day. It also switches on various genes. It also
Okay.
tells the cellular DNA that, okay, this is a healing time because the body needs to gear up for whatever mammals do during the day, which is usually fighting and mating and hunting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then in the evening, we get the long wave red light, and that signals to the body, okay, now it's time to go to sleep, to heal, and to regenerate. So those are the kind of messages that red light gives. In the morning, you get that message, okay, let's gear up for the day. In the evening, switch on those healing pathways so that we can regenerate. And most of us aren't getting those messages because it's very few people nowadays who are actually standing there getting those waves exactly at sunlight and who are doing the same at sunset.
Mhm.
It's just practical for a lot of us. And also blue screens. All
Yeah.
of our devices now use blue screens because blue light is more energetic. It's easier to make. It's easier to produce. So we have blue light coming from our screens. That gives the body a different message. That's, we need carbohydrates. We need to, like I say, fight and mate and hunt and all those things that we need to do daily. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to supplement those wavelengths of light if we're unable to get out during those times. And
Yeah.
really, right, it's like a medicine. I think of it as like a medicine. It's almost like a vitamin C supplement or vitamin D. You might take a supplement if you're deficient in something. It's the same red light.
Yeah.
We are all deficient in long wave red light now. We are all deficient just by the fact that we live indoor lifestyles. So it's very natural. You're delivering it in an artificial way because we're using like battery powered LEDs, but the light that you're giving is something very natural and something that the body knows how to deal with. We're covered in light receptors.
Okay.
It's not just our skin that changes when we go into the sun. All of our organs are responding to that light. Long wave near infrared light will go straight through the body.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's a lot of places locally for us that might have this notion of come in and do this sauna, and then there's a red light panel. And so when you talk about seeking this as a therapy, how should someone be thinking about this is a way of doing red light therapy that will have some effect. And then here's some ways in which somebody might be presenting me red light snake oil. I'm sure that there's a variety of efficacy levels based on that. And I know at some of the places that you've presented your information, there are beds that cost $150,000 that promise one response. And then on Amazon, you can find something for a few dollars. And I doubt those are the same thing. So how should we think about when we see these advertisements and messages about red light therapy? What's a way for us to evaluate what we're hearing?
Yeah, you're right. There are lots of different devices. It really depends what you're trying to do, what your
Okay.
goal. The panels are, if you get a good panel, not off Amazon, there are lots of companies where you can buy these panels. And as long as they've got all of the marks like the ISO and they're putting out a fairly decent dose, and if it's a good company, they will tell you the output. They're good just for general wellness.
Okay.
And different people make different products. Like my product is specifically aimed at the brain and
Okay.
brain. Now that you do need to have one that fits flush to the head because it's quite difficult to get. You've got a lot to get through there.
Yeah.
Uh, and my device is slightly different in that I have higher wavelengths. So normally they go up to about 850 nanometers, which is a normal near infrared wavelength,
Okay.
850. Mine goes a little bit higher because I'm targeting water in the brain. So that might be an additional benefit. And also I have a body pad that goes flush to the body. So you're getting the full dose. Because if you think about light goes in a straight line, and if you can see, if you're standing in front of a panel and you're glowing red, that's because light is bouncing off you.
Right.
That's all
Right.
going in. So my advice is, if possible, get a device that fits flush to the body. Make sure it actually touches the skin because then you get the full dose.
Okay.
And if you're trying to do something like, say, like my device is specifically for any kind of brain wellness issues, you might want to have one that fits flush to your head.
Right.
And then it's all about dosing. And most of the time it's between one to 100 joules per centimeter squared. And it's a massive range because we still don't have all of the research. It's a fairly early science to know exactly what it is. So mine's 30 joules. It's in the middle there. But all of this you can get from a good manufacturer. But you're right. It's difficult if you buy one off Amazon to know what the dose is. You're better buying from a company. But yeah, the panels are good if you're just general wellness. Close to the body if you've got an injury. We spoke about John's device. Lumaflex, that's good for injuries because it will go right on the joints. My device is more for motivation, preventing brain injury. And if people unfortunately have gone to that area where they can use a device where they can actually have a remedial effect. So really just work out what your goal is and get a device that suits that. I think it's great that they have them in saunas and things.
Yeah.
The good thing is it's difficult to get too much red light. It is, if you sat on one of these things all day, yeah, maybe you would have too much. But there are very few side effects of this therapy. And generally, most people can see an effect fairly quickly from using it. It makes your ATP, it encourages the production of ATP, which is your body's energy. And if your body has energy, really most things can heal or rejuvenate or optimize.
So there's a few things you mentioned. Let's say if somebody's looking to purchase something, there's this notion of joules that you mentioned, and you also mentioned, I think, wavelengths. And so if someone's looking at trying to evaluate, I might like to have this with me. And let's say it's my community, somebody may have hurt themselves and would like to recover from that injury more rapidly. what wavelengths and joules might they say this is actually therapeutic and anything maybe below these numbers don't pay attention to? Or I'm not quite sure what the right way to evaluate, how you would suggest us evaluate things we look at, but maybe you could give us some numbers.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question. So we have red light and we have near infrared is invisible to the human eye, but we call it near infrared because it's on that same spectrum.
Okay.
And when you're looking at devices, red light is very good for a superficial. It's good for increasing collagen and elastin in the skin, which is obviously something that we want to get the body to produce, especially if you're going to be doing anything where you need the joints to be
Right.
totally
Yeah.
optimal.
Yeah. Which is our group. Yes.
Of course. So we need to have red light. So that's normally 630 nanometers is a red light wavelength.
Okay.
And then you want to have the near infrared because you do also want to penetrate into the body, because when you penetrate into the body, then you can reach muscles.
Mhm.
So most of the panels will have a red light that's visible and then an invisible one, which will be about 850.
Okay.
So that's what you want to look for. You want to look for one that does both red and near infrared at the same time, because there's probably a synergistic effect going on there of increasing that collagen, fibrinogen, elastin in the skin, and then doing the same thing a little bit deeper in the body. So they're the two things you definitely need, red and near infrared. And then with regards to dosing, you can look at this joules per centimeter squared, or sometimes it's expressed as milliwatts per centimeter squared.
Okay.
Uh, that's just the output where you're not factoring in a time. You want to look for something that's in the range of like 20 to 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, because that's a good output. Uh, Unfortunately, it's difficult to know the input because we're all so different. What the light that I'm receiving from a device might be different to you because it depends on skin tone and
Yeah.
how
Body composition and sure.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, and how your mitochondria are. Because what we're really talking about is mitochondrial health, because the mitochondria are these little organelles within our cells that make energy.
Hmm.
If you're very depleted, if you've been very sick or something's gone on, you're going to need less light because your mitochondria are not going so quickly. The healthier you are, the more your mitochondria are working, the less light or the more light you can tolerate, in
Okay.
effect.
Interesting.
Use a lot of light, and then people who are starting out maybe want to start out slowly.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've been using it, if not daily, pretty regularly since my first conversation with John. He was good enough to send me out his Lumaflex. And I've been trying to make sure I can tease apart what is really happening and then what do I want to have happen, because I
Yeah.
have a variety of very tenacious injuries there. And for lack of a better term, what I would report feeling is a more like motility in the joints, more blood flow, more. And he has this where he will put it where it's in his shirt and on his chest, and I've mimicked that to see, and I feel like it has affected my breathing. I'm curious if you have a story as it relates to perhaps the physical impact that this therapy might have had on somebody in your over time that you've observed that you would tell our group. Like, what you got any stories that say this is what this therapy is capable of?
I will tell a story just because I've been messaging this guy this morning, and so it's fresh in my
Okay.
mind. So I live on the south coast of England sometimes, and so I got a message from a guy who had motor neurons disease, which I think in the States you call.
Okay. Yes.
And he was quite severely disabled by the illness. He was very spastic in his hands and feet. He was not able to move either his hands or feet significantly. So he was in a chair. And he asked me for a device. And as he happened to live in the same town, I was like, sure, I had some prototypes. I gave him a device.
Mm.
I'm looking to see if it actually improved his ability to deal with stress and cope with his illness more than anything. And so then he's messaging me, oh, I feel a little bit looser. I think my hands and feet feel a bit better. Then he was able to go a whole day without sleeping, which is something he hadn't been able to do for 4 years. He was able to just do his whole block of sleep at night, which was a big for him because it changed his interactions with people. He didn't have to go off sleep in the afternoon. And then just recently, he's been able to put his feet flat on the floor. Now, he does a variety of things. I'm not going to say that this is the only thing he does. I know he takes a probiotic. I know he takes D supplements. We've also been talking about how he could change his diet a little bit. But actually, he got his feet flat on the floor for the first time like a month ago and actually stood and took a couple of steps with the aid of a walker.
Wow.
Now, he hasn't been out of a chair for 4.5 years, and he very much contributes it to the red light therapy.
That's
He
interesting.
can actually feel new connections being formed as he uses the gut brain one. So he's using it on his brain and his gut.
Okay.
He's he's very dedicated. Obviously, he's highly motivated.
Right.
But it's a fabulous story, and he put it on his Facebook. And now all of a sudden, I have a huge study group of people with ALS because
Wow.
a lot of people bought the device on the back of his testimonial, and now I'm able to collect data from them too.
Yes.
So that's probably that's something that really gets me up in the morning and makes me smile. And like I say, I've been messaging him this
Yeah.
morning, his latest updates. He's doing great.
Wow.
So that is the power of red light therapy if it's done with intent and done very uh, regularly. You can't really just pick something up and put it down. You do have to be very consistent in the dosing.
Hmm.
But I really think that is just due to extra innovation and muscle tone and blood flow and just upping his energy production enough that his body was able to make those like liver
Yeah.
swells over a period of 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my direct community, people that I train with are a variety of ages. And the 18 to 35-year-olds are not thinking about it quite the same. I'm 54, so I'm on the
Mm.
other end of the spectrum of many of the people that I train with. And I always think a little bit about things that I learned later that if I had carried them with me from the beginning, what might have been the effect? Like, how would I move now if I had paid attention to mobility properly early
Yeah.
on? And so when I think about what you're saying, I've had somebody in the family circle that died of ALS, and ALS was a very devastating experience for the person who died and for everybody around that person. It was excruciating. And the notion that red light therapy in whatever way contributed to the improvement of that person's life that's a powerful thing to say to me because I have a sense of how serious ALS is. But I think then for those of us thinking about how do I do the things that I like doing now for as long as I possibly could, you have to have the general tonic of health in your body. And then some of these therapies feel like they can be site specific too. You're focused on the brain and the gut, but there are joints and whatnot that might need a
Mhm.
little extra attention for those of us trying to armbar people and putting people in triangles and whatnot. That this seems like it has a lot of utility for everybody. You may not, if you're not dealing with an illness that you're trying to find some medicine to remedy, you may be looking to either enhance your current state of health or prevent sort of things that this would be useful to as well. There's a lot to learn in what you're telling us. I know that we have not even opened the door to all the things we could talk to. I totally understand that. But where can people go learn about what we're talking about? Where do you suggest they find you and listen to what you have to say and educate themselves?
Yeah, for sure. My company is called Sarah Thrive. So it's CERA, but it pronounced like my name, Sarah, but it's Sarah Thrive, CERA Thrive. And all of my socials and everything are Sarah Thrive. And so I'm very happy for people to reach out to me with any questions because it is like for some people, it is actually quite out there that you can do all these things just with light. So
Mm.
I understand, that people have a lot of questions about it. And that's why I travel around. We met at a biohack, and at the biohackers are all about getting the edge and optimization and prevention.
Right.
But it's difficult selling. It's difficult to think about that, especially when you're young. But you're right. I'm in the same position as you. There's a lot of things I wish I could have done to set myself up a bit better for being here, but you are where you're at. But you can definitely go from a baseline of where you're at to improving and also preventing. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can find me, Sarah Thrive, any of those things. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm totally happy. I always answer all the questions myself. So
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
yeah.
You've been very generous with me. I know if I have something, you're
Mhm.
always right back to me. So thank you for that. Dr. Serotonin, the rebel scientist, thank you for thank you for spending time with us. And please follow her on her socials. And there's a lot to learn. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure.